Welcome to Love Lies Chronicles.
I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the hardwood floor, feeling the weight of her words pressing down on my chest like a cinder block. I can't stand being around you. She said it so casually, like she was mentioning the weather. No hesitation, no remorse. Just cold, blunt honesty. The silence between us stretched as I let the words sink in. I wasn't even sure how to react. Anger? Sadness? A demand for an explanation? But in that moment, I realized something. I was tired. Tired of trying. Tired of hoping things would get better. Tired of loving someone who had stopped loving me a long time ago. So I did something that surprised even myself. I stood up, walked to the closet, grabbed my jacket, and left. No shouting. No questions. No desperate attempts to make her explain herself. Just silence. I could feel her eyes on my back as I walked toward the front door, waiting for me to say something. Anything. But I didn't. Not because I didn't care, but because, for the first time in a long time, I finally saw things for what they were. Maybe I should have seen it coming. The distance. The way she barely looked at me anymore. How every conversation felt like a chore. It hadn't always been like this. When we first got together, she was all in. The way she smiled when I walked into the room. How she would hold my hand absent-mindedly while watching TV. The soft way she'd whisper my name in the dark. But those things had faded over time. At first, I blamed myself. Maybe I wasn't affectionate enough. Maybe I wasn't doing enough around the house. Maybe I wasn't paying her enough attention. So I tried harder. I took her on spontaneous date nights. I made an effort to compliment her more, to be there for her emotionally and physically. But no matter what I did, it felt like she was slipping further away. And then the excuses started. I'm just stressed. I need space. Work has been exhausting lately. Each excuse was a brick in the wall she was building between us, and I let her stack them higher and higher until I could barely see the woman I fell in love with on the other side. And now? Now she wasn't even pretending anymore. She didn't want me around. When she first said it, I almost asked her to repeat herself, like maybe I had misheard. But she didn't even look at me when she said it. She was standing by the sink, rinsing out her coffee mug, acting like she had just told me something as simple as, "We need more milk." I can't stand being around you. There it was again. Matter of fact. Like I was some kind of burden she had to tolerate. I swallowed hard, my throat dry. All I wanted in that moment was for her to take it back. To say she didn't mean it. That it was just frustration talking. That she was sorry. But she didn't. She just wiped her hands on a towel, tossed it on the counter, and turned away like the conversation was already over. And that's when I realized it was. I could have fought for answers. I could have demanded to know why. Why she didn't love me anymore. Why she had turned into this stranger who looked like my wife, but didn't act like her. But what was the point? I had spent months, maybe even years, trying to fix something that she had already let die. And now I was done. I grabbed my keys off the table, slipped on my shoes. Still, she said nothing. Not even a glance in my direction. I waited for her to stop me, to ask where I was going, to say something. But the silence between us was a coffin, and she had already nailed the last board shut. So I did the only thing that felt right. I walked out the door, and I didn't look back. The cold air hit me as I stepped outside, and for the first time in a long time, I felt lighter. Like I had been carrying around this weight that I never even realized was there, until I finally let it go. I climbed into my car, turned the key, and let the engine hum beneath my fingers. My hands gripped the steering wheel as I stared at my own reflection in the rearview mirror. Was this really it? Was I just walking away? I had spent years building a life with her. A marriage. A future. But what kind of future was it when the person I loved couldn't even stand to be around me? I pulled out of the driveway, and that's when my phone buzzed. I glanced down, expecting maybe a work notification or a pointless email. But it wasn't. It was her. A single text. One I never expected. And when I read it, my entire world tilted. I parked my car on the side of an empty road, my fingers tightening around the steering wheel as I stared at my phone. One message. From her. I didn't want to open it. For a moment, I thought about throwing my phone into the passenger seat and driving without looking back. But curiosity got the best of me. With a slow, measured breath, I tapped the screen. Where are you? That was it. Not I'm sorry. Not come back. Not even, we need to talk. Just, where are you? It wasn't concern. It wasn't regret. It was, what? A demand? A test? I didn't reply. I tossed the phone onto the passenger seat and leaned back against the headrest, closing my eyes. What was I expecting? For her to chase after me? For her to realize, in some grand moment of epiphany, that she had made a mistake? No. People like her don't change. I didn't go back home that night. I found a cheap motel on the edge of town, the kind with flickering neon signs and a barely functioning heater. It didn't matter. I just needed space. I turned my phone off. I wanted to be unreachable. The next morning, I turned it back on, expecting maybe 1 or 2 more messages. There were 10. Where are you? I don't understand why you're acting like this. Are you seriously ignoring me? You're being childish. At least tell me where you are. Fine. Be like that. The last one was a voice message, but I didn't open it. Instead, I sat there staring at the messages, something stirring in the back of my mind. She wasn't upset that I left. She was upset that I wasn't reacting the way she expected. By the afternoon, I finally responded. What do you want? It took her less than 5 minutes to reply. Are you coming home? Not, I miss you. Not, let's talk. Just, are you coming back? I don't know. I texted back. That seemed to set her off. Her messages turned frantic. Are you serious? You're making a big deal out of nothing. Just come home so we can talk. For months, I had been begging for us to talk. Begging for her to let me in. And now, suddenly, when I was the one pulling away, now she wanted to talk? That's when I knew. She never thought I would actually leave. I spent the next few days ignoring her messages, staying in that rundown motel, trying to figure out what the hell I was supposed to do next. And then, on the 3rd night, I got a call from someone unexpected, my best friend, Eric. I almost didn't answer, but something told me I should. Dude, he said the moment I picked up. I need to tell you something, and I need you to listen. His voice sounded tight, almost nervous. What is it? There was a long pause, and then he sighed. I should have told you this sooner, but your wife has been lying to you. A strange, sinking feeling spread through my chest. Lying about what? Eric hesitated. Then he finally said the words that changed everything. She's been seeing someone else. I felt something in my stomach drop. I had suspected something for a long time, the emotional distance, the excuses, the way she avoided my touch. But hearing someone confirm it, that was different. How do you know? I asked, my voice steady, colder than I expected. Because I've seen her, Eric admitted. A few times. At this bar downtown. She's been meeting up with some guy. And they weren't exactly being discreet. I clenched my jaw. Of course. Of course this was the real reason she had pushed me away. She hadn't just fallen out of love with me, she had replaced me. And yet, she still wanted me there. She didn't want me as her husband, but she still wanted me to play my role. A provider. A background character in her life. She never thought I would actually leave. But now? Now, I was going to make damn sure she regretted everything. I sat in my motel room for hours, just staring at the wall. Eric's words kept replaying in my mind. She's been seeing someone else. I wanted to believe I was angry, that I was feeling something strong, something overwhelming, but all I felt was numb. Maybe because, deep down, I already knew. I just hadn't wanted to face it. Looking back, the signs had been everywhere. The sudden distance. The way she would pull away when I reached for her, like my touch repulsed her. The random work trips that didn't make sense, the way she suddenly cared about how she looked, but never for me. And then there were the little comments. The ones that seemed innocent at the time, but now? Now they felt like daggers. You're so predictable. Maybe we just want different things. You act like you own me. Each one was a brick in the wall she was building between us. And I had been too blind, too loyal, too stupid to see what she was really doing. She had already left me long before I walked out that door. After the initial gut punch, I asked Eric for details. I wasn't sure if I wanted to know, but at the same time, I needed to. Who is he? I asked, my voice tight. Eric hesitated. You're not gonna like this. I already didn't like it. Tell me. There was a long pause. Then, finally, it's Brandon. The world tilted. Brandon. Our neighbor. The same guy who borrowed my tools every other weekend. Who waved at me every morning when I left for work. Who I had invited into my home more times than I could count. And her response to me leaving had been to act confused? To play the victim? I could feel something boiling in my chest. A kind of anger that wasn't loud or violent. It was cold. Sharp. Calculated. She thought I was going to come crawling back. She thought I was too weak to walk away for good. She thought she could have her cake and eat it too. Not this time. I wasn't going to go back home and have her lie to my face. I needed proof. Something undeniable. So I took a deep breath and made a decision. I was going to catch them in the act. Eric had told me where she and Brandon usually met, a bar downtown. They go there every Friday night, he said. She tells you she's out with friends, right? She did. And like a fool, I had believed her. So that Friday, instead of staying hidden away in a motel room, I did something different. I got dressed up, not in a way she would expect. Not desperate, not angry, calm, collected, untouchable. Then, with Eric by my side, I drove to the bar and waited. The moment I stepped inside, I saw them. She was sitting in a dimly lit booth, her head tilted toward him, smiling. The kind of smile she hadn't given me in years. She was leaning into him, touching his arm, laughing like she didn't have a husband at home who had just walked out on her. She wasn't mourning our marriage. She wasn't broken over my absence. She was celebrating it, like she had been waiting for me to leave all along. My stomach clenched, but I kept my face neutral. I wasn't going to give her the reaction she wanted. I turned to Eric. Get your phone out. He didn't need to ask why. We recorded everything. The way she leaned in too close. The way he whispered something in her ear, and she giggled like a teenager. The way his hand slid to her thigh. And the worst part? The way she kissed him. Like she didn't have a husband. Like I had never existed. I should have felt broken. But instead, all I felt was ready. She was about to lose everything. I stood in the dimly lit bar, watching my wife, no, the woman I used to love, melt into another man. She didn't know I was there. She didn't know that. While she was whispering sweet nothings to Brandon, I was watching, recording, collecting the final pieces of my exit strategy. And the best part? She still thought she was in control. She thought I was waiting at home, sulking in a motel, agonizing over whether to come back. She thought I was weak. But that was her mistake. Because the moment she kissed him, the moment she sealed her fate, I knew exactly what I was going to do. I didn't confront them. Not yet. Instead, I turned to Eric, who was still holding his phone up, capturing every disgusting second of her betrayal. Got enough? I asked. He nodded, lowering the phone. More than enough. Good, I said, slipping a few bills onto the bar. Let's go. I walked out of that place without looking back. I spent the next 48 hours executing my plan. Step 1. Contact a lawyer. Step 2. Lock down my finances. Step 3. Destroy the illusion she had built. I wasn't just going to leave her. I was going to make sure she regretted everything. The first thing I did was clean out our joint accounts. Not illegally, just my portion. I wasn't going to let her spend my money on her affair partner. Next, I drafted a formal letter to our landlord, letting him know that I'd be moving out and that the lease, which was in my name, would not be renewed. She wouldn't see it coming. And finally, I prepared my grand finale. Sunday morning, I walked back into our house for the first time in days. She was sitting on the couch, scrolling through her phone, looking bored, like she hadn't spent the last few days wondering where I was. Her eyes flicked up to me. Oh, she said, like my presence was nothing more than an inconvenience. You're back. I smiled. Not exactly. She raised an eyebrow, shifting in her seat. What's that supposed to mean? I walked past her, placed a thick envelope on the coffee table, and took a seat across from her. Go ahead. Open it. She hesitated, then reached for it, pulling out the papers inside. Her entire demeanor changed the second she saw the bold word at the top of the page. Divorce. What the hell is this? She asked, her voice sharp now, like I had just slapped her across the face. Exactly what it looks like, I said. She flipped through the pages, her breathing getting faster. You're serious? Dead serious. But she shook her head, letting out a dry laugh. Are you seriously throwing away our marriage over a little argument? I laughed, actually laughed. She still thought I didn't know. You think this is about what you said? I leaned forward, watching her squirm. No, sweetheart. This is about what you did. Her face paled. I don't know what you're talking about. I pulled out my phone, scrolled to the video Eric had recorded, and placed it in front of her. Watch it. She refused. Her lips pressed into a tight line, her face turning red. I don't have to watch anything. This is ridiculous. I hit play. She froze. Brandon. His hands on her thigh. Her lips on his. The way she looked at him, the way she used to look at me. Her entire body locked up. She swallowed. You followed me? No, I said simply. I just finally decided to stop being blind. Her hands clenched around the papers in her lap. You can't be serious, she stammered, trying to regain control. You're really going to end our marriage over one mistake? I stared at her, my expression unreadable. It wasn't a mistake. It was a choice. over and over again. And now, I'm making mine. She panicked. I could see it in her eyes. She hadn't expected this. She had expected a fight, maybe tears, maybe even me begging for an explanation. She hadn't expected me to walk away so easily, which meant she hadn't expected to lose me. The moment she realized I wasn't bluffing, her tone changed. She switched from anger to desperation. "We can work through this," she rushed out. "Please, this doesn't have to mean anything. It was a mistake, okay? A stupid mistake. You're just mad right now." I shook my head. "I'm not mad," I said. "I just finally see you for who you are." Her bottom lip trembled. "I still love you." I let out a breath. "No, you don't." And the worst part? She knew I was right. For the first time, she had no control. No way to manipulate me. No way to gaslight me. No way to spin the story in her favor. I had the truth. And now, I had my freedom. I stood up, grabbing my bag from the chair. Her eyes widened. "Where are you going?" "Anywhere but here." She lunged forward, grabbing my arm. "You can't just leave me." I met her gaze, calm. "You said you couldn't stand being around me. So I'm giving you exactly what you wanted." And with that, I pried her fingers off my sleeve, turned around, and walked out of her life forever. I didn't look back. Not when I walked out the door. Not when I heard her footsteps following behind me. Not when she called my name, her voice cracking with something close to desperation. I kept walking. I reached my car, threw my bag in the back seat, and pulled out of the driveway, leaving behind the life I had built with someone who never deserved me. It started immediately. The moment I pulled onto the highway, my phone lit up. At first, it was simple. "Please, come back. We need to talk. Don't do this over a mistake." Then, when I didn't respond, the panic set in. "You're being unfair." I didn't mean it. I was confused. "You don't get to just walk away from this." There it was. The control slipping from her fingers. She had expected anger. Maybe a fight. Maybe even for me to break down and give her a chance to explain. But she never expected me to be done. That's what was destroying her. Because for once in her life, she wasn't in control. I turned off my phone. As I drove, I smiled to myself. Because what she didn't know was that I had already set things in motion. See, while she had spent months lying to me, sneaking around with Brandon, and treating me like I was nothing, I had been preparing for this moment. While she was too busy thinking she was outsmarting me, I was 3 steps ahead. By the time I left the house, I had already removed my name from our lease. She had no clue that in 30 days, she'd have to figure out where to live. Frozen our joint credit cards. No more luxury spending. No more weekend getaways on my dime. Transferred my paycheck to a new, private account. Every dollar she once had access to? Gone. Sent everything to her family and friends. Oh, she wanted to play the victim? Good luck explaining the videos of her with Brandon to her parents, siblings, and best friend. She thought she could humiliate me. She thought she could replace me like I was nothing. She thought I would crawl back. She was wrong. A week later, I got a text from Brandon's wife. Yes, that's right, Brandon was married too. And after getting my little gift package, she decided to burn his life to the ground. She threw him out, exposed him at work, and filed for divorce. Meanwhile, my now ex-wife? She had lost everything. Her cushy life? Gone. Her affair partner? Gone. Her reputation? Absolutely shattered. And the best part? I never responded to a single one of her messages. She begged. She cried. She promised she would change. But I was already gone. Because the moment she told me she couldn't stand to be around me, she set herself free, and so did I. And trust me, I never looked back.
Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments, and do not forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel.